So it's 6 p.m. Regularly, you let me know when it's Green Arrow Alpha.
Green Arrow.
Good evening. It's Thursday, March 6, 2025, 6 p.m. This is the Plan Commission for the City of Franklin. Mr. Martinez, will you please take the roll?
Mayor Nelson,
Here.
Commissioner Shaga,
Here.
Commissioner Haley,
Here.
Alderwoman Eichmann,
Here.
Alderwoman Day,
Here.
Commissioner Leon,
Here.
and Commissioner Specht.
Here.
Excellent. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Couldn't get an honor guard.
Going on to item B, approval of the minutes, approval of the regular meeting minutes of February 6th, 2025. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
First and a second, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Let's see here, public hearing, we've got one tonight under C1. I'll read the beginning parts of it, and Mr. Fuchs is here to then lead this train. Sinicola area exception, request for an area exception from table 15-3.0203 of the United Development Ordinance to allow construction of a deck exceeding the maximum lot coverage of .20 of the R3 Suburban / Estate Single Family Residence District Special Use Option 1 by approximately 211 square feet upon property located at 8755 South Yorkshire Court, tax key number 855-0070-000. Mr. Fuchs, good evening.
Would you like me to read the public note?
Yes, is the homeowner here? Okay. Contract, okay. Yeah, Mr. Fuchs, would you please read the notice?
Notice of public hearing, City of Franklin Plan Commission, hearing date Thursday, March 6, 2025 at 6 p.m. Common Council Chambers at Franklin City Hall, 9229 West Road, Franklin, Wisconsin, 532. Ashley and Alejandro Smith, XL Custom Contractor applicant, property located at 8755 South Yorkshire Court, tax key number 855-0070-0. The applicant requests an area exception from table 15-3.0203 of the Unified Development Ordinance to allow construction of deck exceeding the maximum lot coverage of .20 of the R3 Suburban Estate Single Family Residence District Special Use Option 1 by approximately 211 square feet. Public hearing is being held pursuant to the requirements of Wisconsin Statute 62.23, parent 7, parent E, and Division 15-10.0209 of UBO. A map of the affected property, all application materials and proposed requests are available at the Department of State Development in Franklin Hall. Public invited to attend the public hearing and to provide input. Proposed request is subject to revisions following hearing for consideration by the Plan Commission.
Thank you. So it is now 6:03 p.m. We'll open the public hearing. Anybody wishing to speak, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Going once, going twice. This is regarding C1 only. I know, you're getting excited. Getting excited. C1 only. Close the public hearing. All right, anything further to have before we start taking questions?
No, it's proposed that's 430 square feet, so they're exceeding the lot coverage by 211.
It says 211 square feet.
Yep. Applicants noted that they don't feel there's any adverse impacts to the adjacent properties. They just feel it fits in.
I absolutely agree. Any other comments up here? Commissioner Speck?
I'm also the vice president of that HOA, so please make sure that the homeowners submit it for notification to the board.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Is there a motion to be read for this? Regular? Or Mr. Fuchs, who's reading the motion?
A motion to recommend approval of an area exception from Table 15.3.0203 of the Unified Development Ordinance to allow for construction of a deck exceeding the maximum lot coverage of 0.2 of the R3 Suburban State Single Family Residence District, Special Use Option 1 by approximately 211 square feet, upon property located at 8755 South Yorkshire Court.
So moved.
Second.
We've got a first and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Fuchs. All right, anxiously awaiting D as in David, citizen comment period. So now citizens may comment upon business matters and items set forth on this meeting agenda. So that means you can talk about E as in Edward 1 and E as in Edward 2. So we will now open general citizen comment period. Please approach the podium. 3 minutes or less, please. I'll time keep. Name and address for the record. Mr. Kleist, good evening and welcome.
Good evening. Andy Kleist, 6025 Parkview Road, Greendale. Regarding the draft UDO, I'm not sure if the plan tonight is to send that as written to the Common Council or not. But if it is, I ask that you please table approving or sending that to the Common Council until some further edits and improvements can be made. The Common Council just recently approved an RFP for sound monitoring and noise mitigation. I appreciate and am thankful that they did that, but that would also provide a good opportunity to have a professional acoustic company review the UDO and provide recommendations as part of that RFP. Additionally, I and other neighbors have provided feedback for the UDO with the hope that it will further clarify ordinances and mitigate noise from the rock that is spilling into the residential neighborhoods that surround that area. I'm not asking for the UDO to be perfect, but I am asking you to dot your I's and cross your T's, especially given all the existing noise nuisance issues due to events at the Rock that have been going on for 10 years now. The UDO needs to clearly address protection for residential neighbors at all times and the potential of future developments or operations. Last spring, you passed Resolution 2024-8109. A couple passages from that resolution say zoning regulations are set forth to protect the right to quiet enjoyment and property use without interference from nuisance and harm, to protect the quality of life assurances as a common law right to all individuals. It also says to avoid conflicting land uses, and such data exists that identifies certain noises are more intrusive, annoying, and harmful to the peace and welfare of residents in the community. And the Common Council recognizes the need to equally protect the public health, comfort, safety, and well-being from adverse impact and further preserve public peace and order. So I appreciate the work that you've done so far in the UDO. I think it's a really great start, and I appreciate that. But I think there's still room for improvement in there, particularly with being clear on noise that spills into the residential neighborhoods. We're all aware that Franklin has a noise issue. We know where a lot of that noise is coming from based on the police complaints. And I want to make sure that this UDO addresses all those clearly to protect the citizens that live around that area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kleist. Ms. Gint.
Good evening.
Good evening and welcome.
Thank you, Commissioners. Dana Gint, 9011 West Hawthorne Lane. I want to echo some comments that Mr. Kleist commented on, that obviously you guys have just released the RFP, and so there will be an expert input on certain aspects of the UDO that I think is really relevant to address nuisance, noise, and things like that for any development in the city and existing properties. I did submit some information to some of the Planning Commission members regarding design standards for outdoor acoustic systems. I think this is a crucial aspect that needs to be addressed in the design phases of any development. It's been brought up numerous times since 2021. I have copies of emails, transcriptions from meetings. We've asked repeatedly that outdoor acoustic systems are part of the design review. And obviously, if there's no outdoor systems, then that's just not relevant in the site plan review. But the Acoustic Society of America indicates that the most important aspect of managing and mitigating noise is proper acoustic engineering and design. So if you're not designing or reviewing, if the Planning Commission or any department is not reviewing the actual plans of the acoustic system, you're not going to be able to mitigate or manage the sound. It'll be the huge problem that's existing in the city right now. And also there's a substantial body of evidence that technology exists that can effectively and efficiently reduce excessive sound. That's also on the American Acoustic Society webpage. I have a couple other concerns. I know I've raised issues about the table 15-3103-04 about the special events and public interest events being in the table. I recommended a couple different options to address that more clearly. I don't think it should be listed as a permitted use. There's a whole
Say
history.
that one more time.
The table, it's 15-304.
Yeah.
In the table itself, and it has, there's a table that says public interest and special events. And then in that table, it says across all zoning districts, it says P, so that's permitted. And that's very concerning to me because I understand that you're able to get a permit if you go through the process, but that's not made very clear in that chart. So I made some recommendations that it should specifically say that, yes, it is permitted, but you have to do this. So it's not a given blanket approval like the city administrator pointed out during the March 2024 meeting, that there's no blanket approval for any special event or any special decibel level. It's not. There's no possibility. So that's what this table kind of relays, that a permitted use, people interpret it as allowable or permitted without further action. And I think that that is a huge problem and will continue to create problems in the city. The other thing I want to point out is I was reviewing table 3 and the article 9, I believe, and there's information about like a 50,000 square foot building that the city and the city administrator, director can approve administratively. Obviously, that is a massive building. I understand if administratively you're trying to kind of streamline approvals, but it's not a 5,000 square foot garage. It is a 50,000 square foot building, unless I'm interpreting it incorrectly, because that is very concerning to me. That is something that the citizens should be aware of, that the public should be aware of, the elected officials, the planning commission should all be aware of such a magnitude of change. And maybe I'm reading it incorrectly, but that's the way, and this UDO is immensely complicated, to be very clear. And it's not easy to decipher, like this used to, I have my old,
You were at
okay,
4 minutes.
thank you.
I've been
I have
falling
my-
asleep at the clock.
One last comment.
Mesmerized.
I do have the old UDO, and so it seems like it's easier to look up information, the table contents, you can go, okay, what do I need here? And you go to that. That's not an option in this UDO. It's very confusing and it doesn't match up with the existing UDO. So it's quite a cumbersome thing, and I hope that this is not approved this evening. I think there's additional changes that need to be done and clarification and table of contents and all this other thing that can help it be an easier product to use to have a guideline for the entire city. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gint. Anyone else wishing to speak? Citizen comment period? Seeing no one else, close the comment period. Mr. Leon.
Thank you, Mayor. A point of order. The applicant for C1, welcome to stay, but don't need to stay through the rest of the meeting. Just wanted to make sure you knew that.
You're good, and
Yeah.
thank you.
Hey, I have a question. And then potentially a proposal, but is the applicant for E2 present? Okay, then I don't have a proposal. Thank you.
I knew where you were going with that, too. Picking up what you were laying down. Okay, E1, I'll read it in its entirety.
The whole UDO?
Oh, my goodness,
All right.
painful.
Mr. Smith goes to Washington. Let's go. Let's start.
It's more than my.
So, E1, Unified Development Ordinance, UDO rewrite. The City of Franklin proposes to repeal and replace its Unified Development Ordinance, UDO, and zoning map. A major component of the update includes consolidating redundant zoning districts to make the UDO and zoning map more user-friendly. This remapping action is not intended to downzone properties, affect property rights, or limit development potential. Rather, it is intended to improve clarity around allowable uses, reduce confusion, and increase alignment between the UDO regulations and the type of development on the ground in Franklin. The Planning Commission held a public hearing for this item on January 23rd, 2025. So, Mr. Martinez and Ms. X, you
Thank you, Mayor.
turn over to you.
So in January, the Planning Commission held a public hearing on this Unified Development Ordinance proposal. At that meeting, staff presented how we got here to this current draft and the major changes between the current and the proposed UDO. And then we received comments and revisions from the public and from the Plan Commission. So the first question to the Plan Commission is, do you want staff to kind of present the major changes that were presented before, because some of the commissioners were not here, or go straight to the revisions?
Well, I think since some were in here, if you want to cover the major ones so we can kind of regurgitate a little bit, refresh our memories, because we didn't have a meeting on the 18th. And, I mean, just move through it briskly.
Okay. Okay. So this kind of an overview of all the steps. This process started in 2021. So we started with a project kickoff and public engagement, several public meetings before the Plan Commission and the Common Council, and also staff meetings. Then the consultant and staff prepare a diagnosis of the major issues of the current UDO. So then identify that kind of the goals was to streamline regulations, to kind of reduce the process time for applications, consolidate similar zoning districts from 39 to 19 zoning districts, and improve the user friendliness of the document. And now we are at the last step, the UDO adoption. We already had the public hearing. If the Plan Commission recommends approval, it will go before the Common Council for decision. This is a list of all the public engagement activities. This was presented in the last meeting, so I will not elaborate here. This is a summary of all the meetings with the Plan Commission. So we held a total of 14 meetings with the Plan Commissions for each of the articles of the UDO. We had a kind of a feedback look. So we presented a draft, then received comments from the Plan Commission and different city departments, then incorporate the comments, and then presented to the task force meeting. Some of the articles were presented twice to the task force. This is kind of the table of contents. Then we will kind of touch on the major changes of each article. For the general provisions, Article 1, there are no major changes, but let me touch on the content of the packet. So this packet includes a red line version. So in that way, you don't need to read the whole document again. So if you go to the kind of the revisions are highlighted in red, and some of the revisions include some kind of explanatory comment. So I think that will be really helpful to kind of to go through the document. Article 2, as I mentioned, was the consolidation of similar zoning districts. Then Article 3 talks about the dimensional standards like minimum lot size, setbacks. So the major change here is to simplify the standards. So this is the table of the proposed UDOs. There's just one table for all the residential districts, while in the current UDO, have one table for each district. And what you see highlighted in red are all the standards that we think that are unnecessary and we're proposing to eliminate. Like, for example, the density. That's already regulated by the minimum lot size. So that's why we consider it redundant and propose to eliminate the density for some residential districts. The kind of simplify the use table. The current use table is about 37 pages. Now with the UDO, it's like about 3-4 pages. So, and this new UDO kind of consolidate. So for example, you see these here like overly specific uses like women's footwear. Then we're consolidating all that into like just general retail to make it easier for applicants. And in some cases in the current UDO, like for a type of retail then requires a special use and it doesn't specify why, then we need to go through all the special use process with the Plan Commission, the public hearing, and the Common Council for just retail use in a commercial district. On Article 4, it goes into a specific of uses. This is an example only. Try to allow by right, without the special use, for duplexes, townhomes, and multifamily developments in multifamily residential district, because that's the intent of this district. That will reduce the permitting time for developers. Also to allow accessory dwelling units, also known as like granny flats or garage apartment or secondary units. In most cases, will be a conditional use. It will need to go for a public hearing. And there is a case for the internal ADU, like in this graphic here. Oh, sorry. Here, that will be allowed by right. Article 5 focus on development standards such as parking. So proposal is to kind of change from the current parking minimums to parking maximums. We noticed that with the current UDO, produce this type of development. So these cases, the parking lot is kind of more than twice in area that the building that is being served. We can see kind of a picture here that this portion of the parking is not being utilized. So with that, it will reduce the parking requirements. It will also reduce costs for development. Building design standards in this part focus like exterior materials. So the current UDO, it's vague on these requirements. So this is a text from the current UDO. It says like aesthetically incompatible or unattractive appearance. With the new UDO, trying to provide more measurable standards, like a minimum percentage of a type of a material, like for example, in this case, masonry. And then as part of when we're preparing the UDO, that we tested these new requirements with existing development. So this, the Knollwood apartments, so if it will comply with the proposed standards. There are some areas that will not comply, but again, because it's mostly garage doors on this facade, but if it will need to be kind of, the design will need to be revised if that is submitted for a new project. However, any approved development will remain kind of in the conforming status. Sign standards, kind of incorporate graphics into the sign chapter and moving this from the municipal code into the UDO and propose a content neutral sign standard because we cannot regulate the message of or the content of sign. Then on natural resources, I will defer to Marion. Yeah.
Okay. So the natural resource protection standards in the UDO are a bit more stringent than a lot of other communities have, and so I just wanted to briefly touch on much of the purpose of these standards is to protect the resources that exist here, and if a impact to them is unavoidable, to require compensation here in the city of obviously also from the federal and state. So we're not the only agency that regulates this, but in terms of what is currently protected, we tend to tell people that these protections are water resources, woodlands, and then sea. So broadly speaking, water resources means a wetland, a river, a stream, etc. In the new UDO, we have some differences in terms of the types of features, and also the protection standard under the doesn't really distinguish between these features. So, in addition, we currently require a natural resource, which requires 3 sets of reviews that revise. So, key changes in structure, just overall, The stormwater and erosion control section of the ordinance is being relocated to the municipal code. There is a new shoreline wetland zoning ordinance that it complies with the state's regulations on this ordinance. Flood zoning is being deleted from the zoning map. Currently on maps in the city of Franklin, there is, in addition to the berm on maps, a layer or a mapped area, floodfront, floodway, etc. That's being deleted, and we are going to apply the floodplain ordinance overall. So the new floodplain ordinance was adopted last year in force. This is addressing it. And there's an overall reorganization. So this is 7, previously the broadly. So there's 4 structural changes. There's also just a little bit of linguistic changes happening. Compensation for natural resource impacts as opposed to mitigation is required by the DNR, so it could work off-site in terms of requiring wetland banking, etc. That's very specific to what they're requiring. This is clarifying the intent of why we have these. We also have some clarification in document plans, illustration. So as Regulo showed earlier, we're going to be revising the table. So currently we have these categories going to a new group. Just in terms of what's changing here, the current ordinance protects surface waters within wetland buffers, wetlands, overlapping natural areas, steep slopes, and the setback. The new ordinance has a new category of proposed protection, which is pack environmental, primary, secondary, and isolated. One of the reasons for this is because it kind of and it also pack areas tend to all of those categories of natural resources, depending on. So that's in addition to the standards of woodland, etc. That you were to delineate just an area. And then we're adding a category of individual tree protection over a certain diameter at breast height. Based on feedback from the community, there are trees that we've seen this on class, where individual trees might be very valuable. The age of the tree is, and then we added some for. In some cases, there are wetland exempt water permitting requirements, but still provide logical services. And so that category of wetland still requires it would be possible to impact them in the context, but we would require that. So we're also proposing some procedural changes. This is one of the things that up for discussion based the feedback of the previous meeting. The current process requires meeting public environmental commission, plan and public hearing commission, common approval during that path was to have quasi. And this is something that creates a lot of extra time for applicants and recommend reducing the number in addition. We've altered the mitigation ratios. That's another area of discussion. So instead of having just broad 1.5 mitigation for every 1 unit of impact is quality of that. There's a mitigation ratio or compensation ratio. And so we're also creating some context to allow for certain natural resource impacts approval through the site plan process. And that's something else that is. So I'm trying to ease the process while still retaining those high standards. This is the previous table of proposed mitigation ratios. Again, this question, I'm all for
Thank you. So I'll continue with some major changes to the subdivision standards. The new UDO has the the cluster development provisions. So for areas that has like natural resources. So if the natural resources, well, are protected, like this example, then the developer will get a
Like a more effective pointer?
I like that pointer, Regulo. It's
okay.
very, very useful.
Then the development will have the option to obtain a density bonus of 30%. In the administrative standards, kind of provides what is the role of the plan commission, what is the role of the zoning administrator, kind of proposing to incorporate workflow charts that makes easier for applicants to understand. And then we'll discuss later the question for policy direction, the roles of the plan commission versus the zoning administrator. And the last three articles, there are no major changes. So until here is all the information that was presented in the public hearing meeting. Now we can jump into the revisions. So as I mentioned before, the draft UDO has the revisions highlighted in red. And in the cover memo, staff elaborates on some revisions or questions that kind of needs more attention. However, if you have any questions about the revisions in the draft UDO, please let us know. So one of the questions in the public hearing was, what are the criteria for designating parcels into new zoning districts? So here we have the current zoning map and proposed zoning map. So there are several criteria that we use to kind of designate the parcels to the new zoning district. So the first one is just to retain the existing zoning district. Example, City Hall, currently institutional, proposed to be institutional. No changes. And there are many cases. The Forest Hill Village condominium just next to City Hall, currently multifamily, will be multifamily. No changes. Okay. Second, the similar zoning district that kind of I touched briefly before. This is an example of the R5 and R4 zoning district. Even the name in the current UDO is the same name, Suburban Single Family Residence District. And then all these standards with the red box have the same value between the two zoning districts. So we're consolidating this zoning district in kind of combining. And then this is an example, current zoning map here versus proposed. So what is like R3 and R4 will be this suburban estate residence, which is R7 that allows for two-family will be multifamily, which is R5 will be this suburban residence because it has similar development standards. Okay. Third criteria is the consistency with the comprehensive master plan. So we have, for example, this tract of land on 116th Street. Currently, it is residential with conservancy, but it's owned by the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. And in the future land use map is for parks and open space, and also has the floodway district as an overlay. So considering the ownership and the future land use map designation that the proposed zoning district is parks and open space. If this is like, for example, like a privately owned parcel, we will not recommend to be parks because that could be considered like a regulatory taking. Okay. The other criteria is like easement and restrictions. This is an example of an outlot in the Ryan Meadow subdivision. So outlots, by definition of the UDO, are not buildable. So are being proposed as parks and open space district.
City Attorney, can you turn this
Just
button on?
one thought with saying parks and open space for outlots. Outlots are citywide. And they're in private, if you will, developments, not open to the public. And when reviewing this, my fleeting thought was put public park type terms on all these larger parcels, outlots of land, might be inviting people and causing, you know, neighborhood issues or something. I just thought I'd put that out there. Or concerning a citizen who thinks they can go there. And all of a sudden there's some complaint filed after they were mushroom picking something on an outlot in a subdivision.
There's quite a few parcels, so the Bush and Slaughter obviously comes to mind in the city. So
I just thought I'd mention it for.
Okay. Good catch.
Mr. Haley?
Just on that topic, why wouldn't they be? My understanding is most outlots in developments, they are accessible to the public. They're privately owned, but we require if there's a water body on them that they have public access to them. It's something we should look at, because I understand what the attorney is suggesting, but what are they really? What is their purpose? Are they being held for a future development or some part of the site plan? If they're just going to be held forever and they're deed restricted as to usage, then why wouldn't we show them as parks?
Sonar for like storm water management ponds or conservation easements, but are owned like by the homeowners association in some cases.
Correct.
So, and as you mentioned, there are privately owned parcels that are zone parks.
How do we want to deal with it becomes the question.
I'm not totally sure what if access is something that is required for outlots and divisions, especially when they're in their shared ownership. Access.
Should they be dedicated as parklands then, if, for example, that was the intent of the outlot?
Yeah.
Subdivision plats?
Yeah,
I mean,
and-
that might be the right way to.
No, and just by the District 10 is parks and open space. So it could be also for natural resources that are not necessarily open to the public, maybe privately owned. So,
They still function as open space. It's an excellent
Right.
question that's being asked, but how do we determine which pocket they go into? Is this a public open space?
well,
Can it be used by the public, or is it just for people to look at from the
Or is
sidewalk?
it private?
in this particular example,
Mm-hmm.
no, it's not open to the public. It's owned by the homeowners association. Well, it has the conservation easement area and the stormwater management plan.
Something we need to figure out. I don't quite know the right answer. But the UDO speaks about preserving and protecting public open space and parklands for the, the benefit of the public in the city. So how do we determine what is and what isn't? What we're doing now, with our discussions with the updates in the zoning maps, we've captured those larger pieces. But we probably ought to figure out what the right thing to do with outlots is. I mean, here we've got an outlot It's not owned by the city. It's still in private ownership as far as I understand. And then what are we doing with it?
Right.
Is it just transferred to the city and nobody can go there, or? And I don't know exactly why that was made into an outlot. Could have been an outlot and retained ownership by the homeowners association, maintained by them. I'm not saying I know the answers. I'm asking the question.
I agree with you.
Because in this specific instance, I think the intention is that reverts somehow to the city. So then it should become a city park or whatever. I mean, and I'm just going by the discussions we've had as these different parcels around there were all developed and such. But right now, there's a big piece of green space out there. There's been talk about the city building a trail through.
Commissioner Speck?
Yeah, I don't know whether you have the answer right now. We need to come up with it, though.
So I guess my question comes into play here is when you do have a subdivision that has an HOA that has either wetland conservancy on it or detention basins where they're still being maintained and operated by the HOA, does the city, what I'm hearing you say here, is that they would take ownership of all these detention basins and consider them as park and do maintenance?
No, that's
No,
not
no,
what I
no.
was recommending at
Okay,
all.
so we're trying to look for
We were
for
talking more
separation
about somebody that
between,
wants to go look at the wildflowers or the butterflies coming through on an open piece of green property.
so you're looking to have two different classifications for,
No, I'm just trying to figure out how we define those. At what point do we call it park and open space? And at what point is it private property that just looks pretty?
well, and there's still some benefit too, to be able to define open space as it transitions throughout the city in order to create some corridors. So making sure that you can still identify them and make them work together is also, should be critical as we're laying this out.
Be part of the master plan.
Well,
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with anything I'm hearing here. We're-
Well, are we good to move forward with staff understands the concern?
Yes.
Staff will get clarification, staff will bring it back.
Yes,
All right,
there
please
will
move
be
on.
Many things that I have questions about that we're not going to answer tonight.
Thank you. Okay. Finally, for the criteria of the zoning map is the non-conformity analysis that this was prepared in the diagnosis at the beginning of this project. So for designated parcels, especially for residential districts, we consider the minimum lot area and to not create non-conforming lots. Like this example is the Mission Hills subdivision. So it was designated to a zoning district, the residential suburban residence, that has a minimum lot area that is below the existing area of the lots. So, okay. Then the other question from the public hearing was about the agricultural districts, the prime agricultural, and the only plain agricultural district. The question was where's the difference between it is necessary to keep both districts. So staff did some research on the comprehensive master plan and found that the the comprehensive master plan state that the city of Franklin contains the last prime agricultural lands within Milwaukee County. And also staff compared what is currently zoned as prime agricultural, which is kind of the red hatch area, and compared to a map of the comprehensive master plan that is called hydric soils, and kind of find correlation between the prime agriculture and the hydric soils.
Excuse me, Mr. Martinez, it's 6:44. I'm turning the gavel over to Common Council President Michelle Eichmann.
Okay. Okay, sorry. Okay. And then find this correlation between the hydric soil that I described in the comprehensive master plan as being fertile for agriculture. And then the main difference between the prime agricultural and the agricultural district is the minimum area. So the prime agriculture is 35 acres while the agriculture is only 3 acres. And per the Comprehensive Master Plan of 1992, it says that one of recommendation was to keep this high minimum area of 35 acres to protect this farmland of local significance according to the comprehensive plan. That's why staff recommends to keep agricultural and prime agricultural zoning districts.
I have one question on that, if I may.
Michelle.
Oh, I'm good.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Just one question. I don't have any fundamental problems with the recommendation. I just have a question sort of long-term, and you may not have an answer to this, but the recommendation is to leave these separate because it is consistent with the current comprehensive master plan. Aren't we kind of in the process of looking at updating that CMP? And then, so long-term, is it the forecast that we would then keep this in the revised version as well, separate going forward? I guess I'm just looking to see if it's something that is immediately going to be changed in the next, master plan. Is it something that we should look at changing here? Will we have this document open, or is the plan to keep it separate in kind of perpetuity moving forward?
Yeah, we have to kind of update in the plan. One is first will be the update the demographic data of the comprehensive plan, because it was prepared in 2009, and now we have census data 2010 and 2020. That could be done by staff. That's the plan. And then after that, and there is budget for it to hire a consultant to do like a more full update of the comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
However, there is a note that the future land use map of the current comprehensive plan doesn't have an agricultural use category.
Okay.
And that could be reviewed if we update it.
Sure, because I just know that, we have or we might actually be the only municipality that has open land like that for development. So reserving 35-acre parcels in big chunks, if there's other development that wants to come in. So the way this is written makes it pretty restrictive. So like I said, I don't disagree with it. I'm not saying that we change it, but I could see as we get down the line that this might be something that is looked at in the future. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. The other topic discussed in the public hearing was the protest petitions. So that's in the current UDO. So if, like, for example, if there's an application for a special use and 20% of the adjacent owners file a protest petition, then it requires a 3/4 vote of the Common Council to approve that special use application. So this table here kind of to compare which applications are subject to protest petitions in the current UDO versus the proposed UDO. So the zoning amendments have the protest petition in the current UDO. In the proposed UDOs, we're proposing to not have that because there is a Wisconsin Act 2017 that eliminated a statutory protest petition for zoning amendments. So that is being changed based on the state statutes. For special use, it will remain. And for site plans, there are no protest petition in the current UDO, and they will not be in the proposed UDO.
Why do you think you can still do it for a special use, which is a zoning activity?
Because it's not a zoning amendment, not a
right.
rezoning.
Make a note to revisit the statute again, because I just read it as wiping out protest petitions to increase the zoning or the voting requirement for any kind of land use activity decisions.
Okay. Okay. Now in this part, so what we call questions for policy direction is that staff kind of identify some revisions that needed to be to the draft, but we don't have a clear direction. So we ask the Plan Commission to provide direction. In some cases, we provide different options for the Plan Commission. So first was the community living arrangements. One of the questions in the public hearing was why to set a separation distance between these facilities. Okay. And I have a quote here for the American Planning Association policy guidance on community residence. It says that the intent of a separation requirement for community living arrangements is to enable its residents to achieve normalization and integration into the community. It should be located in a normal residential neighborhood. If several group homes were located next to one another or be placed on the same block, the ability of the group homes to advance their residents' normalization will be compromised. Such clustering will create a de facto social service district in which many facets of an institutional atmosphere will be recreated and will change the character of the neighborhood. End of the quote. So what we are proposing is to have two different categories of community living arrangements. If it's under 16 persons, it will be treated just as a single family residential. And if it's have more, then it will be treated like a residential multifamily. Because according to the Fair Housing Act, we cannot have more restrictive requirements for community residents than a standard single family homes. So the question for policy direction is, and this is a kind of, again, compare the current UDO versus the proposed UDO. For 8 and fewer persons, they are permitted in all residential districts, in the current UDO and the proposed UDO. No changes there. Then for community residents with 9 to 15 persons, the current UDO requires a special use permit in all residential districts, while in the proposed UDO will be permitted. And this is the question here. Should the current special use requirement for community living arrangement with a capacity of 9 to 15 persons be retained? That's kind of the question. So in the motions, motion sheet, so there is one motion to kind of to recommend the whole document, and there are separate motions for this question for policy direction. So question to the chair here, I can continue the presentation and present all the questions, or maybe the commission should move in this question up to the chair.
I am open to input from others, insight of where you want to go with it. Any comments from anyone?
I'm okay to do them all together at the end, but unless we want to do questions, if anybody has questions on them as we go through, and then just kind of take them all at the end. That matter to me.
Yeah, we can do that.
So should I
That's true.
continue?
Yeah.
Okay.
And just anyone that has questions along the way, just let us know and we'll stop them. That's okay. Thank you.
Okay. So I go to the next question. This is between the Plan Commission and the zoning administrator roles, kind of the approval. And this was referenced by one of the residents. So this table compare the current UDO versus the proposed UDO on what can staff approve or the zoning administrator. So
6:53 PM, I've returned. Thank you. Good job. Still here.
So for site plans, if it's a new site plan, currently requires approval of the Plan Commission. With the new UDO, if it's a new site plan under 100,000 square feet, it may be approved by the zoning administrator. That's what one of the residents referenced. If it's over that threshold, then it's still require the Plan Commission approval. The major amendment remains with under the Plan Commission role. However, the draft UDO sets measurable criteria for amendments. In the memo, I kind of copy the section of the UDO currently for minor site plan amendments when it says that is very vague. So that's a problem when we receive an application. So is this a minor amendment? Is this a major? It's very vague. So we need to apply kind of discretion there, and that's not recommended. We would like to have measurable standards, like a 5% or of increase of the floor area. Okay. Then for temporary uses, kind of any use that is not listed in the ordinance, then requires Plan Commission approval under the current UDO. So, and that that is being retained, and the proposed kind of any use not listed will still be required, the Plan Commission approval. What is being changed is that these uses, like seasonal sales and food trucks, no more than 180 days, that could be approved by the zoning administrator. Like, for example, the food truck that is in the agenda, if this is approved, that could be reviewed by the zoning administrator.
And avoid plan.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah. Okay. And then for plan development, new plan development district will be still Plan Commission approval. And the difference is that minor PDD amendments will be have the option to be approved by staff. But again, the ordinance provides measurable standards to difference between major and minor amendments. So the question here is, should the current role of the Plan Commission be retained? That's the question for the Plan Commission. Okay. And next we go to natural resource special exceptions.
Thank you. I touched briefly on this earlier, but the question before you is the draft UDO proposes for the review of these types of applications, still requiring a public hearing. But then the question before you is which bodies should application, which body should hold the public hearing if we were to have the final decision, if we were to eliminate Plan Commission. Recommendation. That's up. The other question up for discussion, impact to environmental corridors at all? And if so, what level of compensation should be out at the last meeting? The categories of environmental corridors, while it's true that environmental corridor name, the purpose of that particular map. In fact, isolated natural resources are often identified as such because they have particularly valuable. They are not part of recommendation. So, what category of environmental is it appropriate to allow text out to or not permitted? The draft UDO has the 1.5 units quantity for primary environmental corridor. We'll also note that those and one other category. Proposed change would be or you could
I could start with a.
Oh, here's the map of the environmental corridors. The area in blue, the area in blue is the primary environmental corridor. It's overlapping with the significant area.
Next will be the zoning map. So we can stop here. If
Yeah,
you-
are we gonna discuss the last part, or how do you wanna, it's your call how you wanna do this.
When you had stepped out, Mayor,
Oh, did you make a decision?
with the
like it.
Alderman Day,
I like it.
the general consensus was to ask questions at the end, but we can change
No.
that if you want to ask questions as we go along.
Keep going. We'll do it at the end.
So that's the presentation about the ordinance text. Now we can move into the proposed zoning map. So we made some revisions to the previous version. The symbology of all the zoning district was revised to make it easier to discern between the zoning districts. Thank you, Commissioner Haley, for that comment. Then there are some parcels that were revised that you can see that in your zoning map with the purple outline. That was the parcel that were revised in comparison to the previous map. And then the packet has a table with all these parcels, kind of with information with the previous zoning district and the revision, and a note why it was changed. Then we have some questions for policy direction on the zoning map for specific parcels. Two parcels. The parcel that you see with the question mark on the zoning map. First one is the 9140 South 51st Street. It is the only parcel in the city that is zone R1E. And as we mentioned, we tried to consolidate zoning districts. So the staff recommendation is to eliminate this R1E district and designate this parcel as a planned development, retaining all the development standards and vested rights into a new PDD, and then eliminate the R1 district. Kind of that will preserve kind of the owner's rights. However, the owner preferred the option of retain the R1E zoning district. And another alternative will be to designate this parcel as a multifamily, because this R1E district allows for more than one unit. So these are the three options identified by staff for consideration of the Plan Commission. And the other parcel for policy direction is this parcel is kind of next to the DPW facility. It is about 60 acres approximately. And it has currently multiple zoning designations from industrial and also residential multifamily. And we reach out to the Franklin Public Schools, which is the owner. Their preference is to have it as institutional. However, the problem is that in the future land use map of the comprehensive plan is designated as business park. And per state statutes, also rezoning needs to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. So if the Plan Commission recommends the institutional, then staff can prepare a comprehensive master plan amendment from business park to institutional to be consistent with the future land use map.
In addition, they've previously submitted an application for that project, but through it, just. We already have a draft master plan amendment.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. So happy to answer any question about the revisions to the UDO draft, and also staff prepare motions for each of the questions for policy direction, the question about the text, and the question about these two parcels.
Okay, do you want to go back in order and then we'll just hit them, or how is Mr. Leon?
7:04 PM. I'm going to step away and I'll be right back.
Thank you, sir. Okay,
We can go in order to the first question.
if you, why don't we do that? I think that makes the most sense, so we can just kind of get to these things.
Okay.
What's that?
This is about the community living arrangement like group homes. So current UDO for community living arrangement between 9 and 15 persons requires a special use permit. Should we retain that requirement or go to the proposed UDO, which be a permitted use?
Alderman Day?
Could you go over, you mentioned as you were presenting this to us, that we could not be more restrictive to another code. Could you, my concern is if we retain the 9 to 15, would that be going counter to that, we can't be more restrictive?
Yeah, that's the question, because the Fair Housing Act says that prohibits placing additional zoning requirements on a community residence for people with disabilities that meets the zoning code requirement of other residential uses. So like, for example, for 8 and fewer persons, we are treating that just like a single family. So that's why it will be, it is currently permitted in all residential districts. But someone can argue that if it's more than 9, that may be considered kind of multifamily. And that's why in the current UDO has the special use requirement.
So I guess my question is, if we kept it as is, we would not be in violation of the Fair Housing Act, or would we?
Is my understanding that not, because we are treating this as a multifamily.
That was the clarification I was looking for. Okay, thank you.
It is 7:06 PM or 19:06 hours. Mr. Leon is back.
Zulu time.
Yes. Is something else? Mr. Haley?
Hypothetical question. What about families, large families? You got 10 kids. Not frequent, but it happens. What do we do? So when that 9th child is born, I mean, I'm thinking maybe we need to leave it permitted in all districts. What are we trying to prevent?
There's also multi-generational families too that could be bumping into that.
Yes, is the question I'm asking.
Mr. Fuchs?
I think this is fine specifically to arrangements with
Right,
state
right,
legislation.
right,
Our CACs, your asset and so it doesn't apply just
right.
its preference.
Thank you for the clarification. Ms. X, you concur?
I was going to concur just because zoning doesn't originally. So some communities have people living in household.
Thank you.
Well, okay, is there a motion to keep it like it is, or? I mean, what's that? I think how this might work a little better for us tonight, so we're out of here a little quicker, is if staff says this is what we recommend and why, and then we'll go from there. Because
Right.
my goal, I'm going to soapbox for a minute, is to streamline, make things quicker, easier to operate, not more restrictive than any other community around us, not more restrictive than the DNR, because we're getting hammered. We're getting hammered from people, and that's the reality of our community's reputation. So let's get this thing rolling to where we're not going to be more restrictive than our neighbors and the state. So
Yeah,
please.
yeah.
drive.
The staff recommendation is to have it as permitted use, the community living arrangement between 9 and 15 persons.
Say that again?
So the recommendation is what's in the proposed?
Correct.
Okay.
So the recommendation is to move as proposed, not what's existing.
Correct. Permitted in all residential districts.
Everybody okay with that? We're not looking for a motion here, are we? Well, okay, they are us, so are we looking for a motion, Counselor?
Yes, because I think they want to get direction from the plan commission, and that's how it's done.
Then a motion it shall be. Alderman Eichmann.
Thank you. In that motion, should we clarify that this is for state licensed facilities? Does that need to be in there? So there's no confusion about,
No, because
Residential.
community living arrangements is defined in the ordinance.
thank you for that clarification.
Okay, Mr. Leon.
Before any motion is called on any of these matters tonight, I maintain that it is not the role of Plan Commission to make a recommendation to council about our UDO. So I will ask that on any motion, please call the roll, as I intend to abstain.
Well,
Hold on a minute. Say that again? So you're going to abstain from every motion tonight?
Yes. Unless I'm convinced otherwise.
well,
Okay. Could, all right, this is getting weird. Mr. Counselor.
I'd appreciate hearing the basis for
All right.
Commissioner Leon's thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. And as I've addressed in other meetings on this matter, I believe it's the role of this Plan Commission to interpret the UDO and the Comprehensive Master Plan and any other document that's approved by the council, and that the council, as the elected officials, should take recommendations directly from staff and approve, amend, or I guess not approve. And then this body, like when I joined it first time, however many years ago, interprets it and makes recommendations on individual agenda items, not to influence the document itself.
So that's your personal opinion versus according to some rule or law that you're aware of.
That's what I believe the role of this body is.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
no, I just wanted to point it out that in the current and proposed UDO, among the functions of the Plan Commission are listed, and I quote, prepare and recommend a zoning district plan and regulations, and prepare and recommend land division regulations.
Thank you.
Okay. Alderwoman Day.
And then I'm just going to throw one other log on the fire and understand if I missed my opportunity, but I was one of the individuals who was unfortunately unable to attend the meeting with the public hearing. I do have a few questions on other items in this document. I promise it's not long. More for clarity, I don't think it's anything that would prevent me from voting one way or another, or saying that we need to table the document, but would appreciate some leeway from my fellow commissioners if at some point I'm able to ask those few questions. Thank you.
Absolutely you are.
Okay.
So, is there a motion for the amended portion of this? We're looking for exact verbiage. So you're looking for a motion to amend as presented. How about that? Amend as presented.
Okay.
Yes, is that good?
Yeah, I will only be specific on what is the question. So a motion to recommend the amendment as presented with regards to the requirement for community living arrangements with a capacity of 9 between 15 persons from the current Unified Development Ordinance.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
First and second, roll call, please. It's going to be a roll call every time.
Commissioner Shaga?
Aye.
Commissioner Haley?
Aye.
Commissioner Alderwoman Ayman?
Aye.
Alderwoman Day?
Aye.
Commissioner Leon?
Abstain.
4 ayes, no noes, one abstention.
Commissioner Specht?
So I got messed with this. So we have 5 ayes, no noes, 1 abstention, motion carries.
Next question. I explained the difference between the role of the Plan Commission in the current and proposed UDO. So the question is, should we retain the role of the Plan Commission as zoning administrator as is in the current UDO, or the proposed draft UDO?
And what is staff's recommendation before we go to motion?
The proposed UDO.
Okay. So the motion is to go with the proposed change to this UDO. Alderman Day.
Thank you. Apologies if this was discussed at the last meeting, because I know it did come up a bit there. Was there a rationale as to how the 100,000 square feet number was settled on? Is it like an industry standard? Is this something that other communities use as a benchmark? What is it about that particular square footage that is the delineation point? And my second question to that is just drilling down in this document, the what we got for this evening, E1, it says floor area of 100,000 square feet. Is that the size of the building, 100,000 square feet, or the size of the parcel? Because that makes a difference
Right.
too, because then that's, because if it was like 100,000 square feet and it's the whole parcel, that's one thing. If it's just the building, well, then it makes me a little bit more curious about why we came up with the 100,000 square
Right.
feet.
Yeah. So to the last question is about the building.
Okay.
Okay. And the criteria was kind of, we'll say, industrial buildings like Carmex or Saputo, buildings like that are typically over that 100,000 square feet. So that's going to be criteria. If it's a building that size, we'll go to the plan commission. And other small, like a fast food restaurant, typically will be under that threshold. So, yeah.
Is it the thought that those smaller type developments might not have as many curveballs per se, so they're more kind of cookie cutter, and that's why they wouldn't need an additional review? Or
If they are permitted use.
okay,
And again, permitted doesn't mean that it doesn't require a permit. It still require the site plan. But if like a use is listed as a special use that may have potential nuisance, like a noise to adjacent neighbor, that is to require the special use. And with the new draft, it will require like a sound study if they have like outdoor music, regardless of the building area.
and I think kind of where I'm going to in a roundabout way is I have no issues with our staff doing reviews that they can do. I have no issues with us trying to streamline the process and make things move better for people who are trying to develop in the community. I think the one point that I am a little bit stuck on is it seems like the majority of things would then perhaps move through without Plan Commission oversight. And I'm not saying that the Plan Commission needs to have the oversight, but sometimes that's the only way that the public knows what is going into a certain area as far as a vacant building or a new building or something like that. So for new development, how would the general public kind of know what's going in if they had concerns about something, coming into their neighborhood? So I guess that's the piece that's missing for me is how we can kind of keep the general public aware of the new developments that are coming in, if it's something that they would have concerns about that they would want to raise with, the planning staff.
Yeah, just want to clarify that with the current UDO, if it's a permitted use, it is a site plan, even if it goes for the Plan Commission, there is no like a public hearing.
No,
or
not a public hearing, but
notice.
it's in
Right.
the
Information.
in the information in the packets and whatnot. Yeah,
Right.
I'm not asking for public
Right,
hearings.
right.
I'm just saying there's no publicly available information about a development.
Right. And the other criteria is that typically there are 3 levels of review. So the administrative, so if it's a permitted use and it complies with all the requirements, that is an administrative level, and that's a decision that optimally will be by staff. Then if it doesn't comply with one standard and it may require like a variance, then it goes to the next level. That is the quasi-judicial, that Board of Zoning and Building Appeals for a variance. And if it's like a rezoning that a use is not permitted and they're requesting to change it to a permitted use, then it goes to the next level, that is the legislative, and that's when it goes to Common Council. So with these 3 levels, we consider that the site plan, if it's permitted and complies with all these standards, is administrative because there's no discretion. It complies, should be permitted, should be entitled to approval.
And with the updates that were made to the different districts and zoning categories, this should help that process, right? With things coming in, it should be more easily falling into a category where there should be, if it's in there, it should be in there and it doesn't need extra oversight.
Right, that's why the zoning district established what is permitted, what is special, and what is prohibited in each district.
Mary?
I want to respond to the discussion about how can the community know, because I think that is a valid question, and currently, something that is a permitted use. We are not. That's not necessarily something that the zoning ordinance can resolve. That's an administrative issue about how we're communicating. So, I hear the concern. There are some communities, Oak Creek is a good example of this, have all development applications or technology have. So there are other options. That is a real concern. Question about scale.
Right.
Do we really want to bring it to the level?
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. I just, throwing that out there as kind of when I was working my way through the thought process, those were the things that popped into my brain, recognizing that it's not something this document can solve, but just something to think about.
Yeah, and that's, so for example, a zoning, it's administrative review, it's a new business, but if they're not changing something, their own fault, that's,
I hear you.
we're not gonna, but I get what you.
Yeah.
Something that can be added.
So I think what our Director of Administration just said, for those that couldn't hear in the mic, is that we could add something to our city's website that could be like another one of those, click on current developments, and things can be listed there as well, as in a way to assist people in increasing the knowledge of what's going on in our fine city. Mr. Haley?
Thank you. I think it makes sense to try and streamline some of this. The question that we need to grapple with is the threshold. 100,000 square feet. Maybe staff can tell us, how does that compare to Target or some building we might all know? It's a big building.
Just the current UDO for the 27 Street District has another threshold. We consider that alternative, but went with the 100, that is 20,000 square feet, and it has different standards, is below or over that threshold. That could be an alternative.
So how big is a 100,000 square foot building? What have we got in Franklin that compares?
Well, like for example, Saputo is like about 200,000.
So the point is it's a big building. I think, we want to streamline and send that your way, but is 100 the appropriate threshold, or is it 50 or 75? A 100,000 square foot building is going to raise a few eyebrows when it starts going up, and people are going to wonder where was the review. And, we still have done it right, but we all sit here and have the public come up and say, why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you do something about it? How could you let something that big go on that piece of property?
Yeah, we suggest that other threshold, the 20,000 square feet, because it's in the current UDO.
So the recommendations to go from 20 to 100 now.
Well, if the Plan Commission are concerned about these 100,000 square feet, that's an alternative.
That's what I'm putting out here. At what point do we become comfortable with it? I mean, it really is a council action, but the possibility is that all of a sudden one day construction could begin on a 100,000 square foot building. And as I said, eyebrows will start going up, and what was the process and how did this happen? Not saying it's wrong. It's just people will question. So what's the threshold we're comfortable with? I don't know what that answer.
Well, I mean, if you want to go to what's the current UDO is 20.
Well, only for the South 27th Street District, but and putting that as a reference.
I think if it's on the 27th Street and it's consistent with the rest of the city, keep it at 20. And if the commission's got anything else, amend it to 20,000.
I'm saying at some point in the future, if that's too onerous, it wouldn't take that much to go in and change that threshold.
Do we know
hard to say. For example, I don't know, the Landmark Credit Union by Rawson Avenue, and that's about 6,000 square feet. You know,
20
it's
is
a small-
substantial.
Yeah. So,
Alderman Day, did you agree with that?
Yeah, I said 20,000 is still, pretty big, I think.
So if we can make an amended motion or make the motion that we amend this to anything 20,000, up to 20,000? I'm just gonna put it out there, just if somebody would make that motion, I can't.
I would make that motion at 20,000.
okay. So the motion is motion to recommend the role of the Plan Commission and the zoning administrator as proposed in the UDO, with the exception of the threshold for new site plans. That will be zoning administrator approval up to 20,000 square feet.
I'll second.
We've got a first and a second. This will be a roll call, please.
Commissioner Shago. Commissioner Haley.
Aye.
Alderwoman Eichmann.
Aye.
Alderwoman Day.
Aye.
Commissioner Leon.
Abstain.
Commissioner Specht.
Aye.
5 ayes, no noes, 1 abstention, motion carries.
Okay. Thank you. Marion.
So staff's recommendation here is that natural resource special exceptions by what is will be application. Also.
Well, you can give I would appreciate if staff would help giving a suggested motion to move this along.
Sure, so.
One option is a motion to recommend the approval role of the Common Council for natural resource special exceptions as proposed in the draft UDO. No, for natural resources, the Common Council.
You guys work it out, and then we're gonna.
So the proposal is to remove the Common Council decision and leave it for Common Council. Plan Commission decision, right.
Okay, could you state it one more time, and then we're gonna.
Okay. A motion to recommend that the approval role for natural resource special exceptions shall be held by the Plan Commission.
That's the motion? Excellent. Is there a motion on the floor?
So moved.
Second?
You've got a first and a second, and if you don't mind moving forward, if we could just kind of go in the order, Mr. Martinez, just go like in order like this. Starting with Commissioner
Oh, I
Specht,
see, I see,
opposed to
I see.
going back and forth.
I see.
Getting
Or
all
I
kind
could
of
go
crazy.
hang out at that end of the table if you
You
like.
could.
You want me to move over there?
I know where I want you to.
I know,
I know where I want you to go
right now.
So shall I start with Commissioner Specht?
Please.
Okay. Commissioner Specht,
Aye.
Commissioner Shago.
Aye.
Commissioner Haley,
Aye.
Alderwoman Eichmann,
Aye.
Alderwoman Day,
Aye.
Commissioner Leon.
Abstain.
5 ayes, no noes, 1 abstention, motion carries. Thank you. That was like smooth as butter.
Oh, there's one disruption.
It's all right. It's like you're like the margarine of the place. All right, next up. What do we got? Article 7.
So the draft language here, I have 2 options of 1.5 units for each category or not permitted. That was staff's recommendation is that I'm interested to hear what the commission has to say about this. Because of the way that these categories are up, it's a little bit different in relation to other by this. So my thought process here question, first of all, on the question of whether it impacts to environmental corridor or allow that. 1 I recommend as presented again.
Okay, I'll start. Short answer is, I believe yes is the answer to be able to develop and impact environmental corridors. That's so, I think that should be two separate things, but yes. We've got a number of things coming up. In fact, some are school related where I know it's going to have an impact. So we don't want to be shutting that whole school plan down. So I'll start with that. Mr. Haley?
As I spoke on this previously, it's my understanding, and I can't quote chapter and verse on it, but the city has made a commitment to Southeastern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission to protect all three of these. It's part of another deal years down Ryan Road Interceptor. So I don't know that we can just ignore it. And for those that weren't here, basically, the difference between a primary, a secondary, and an isolated natural corridor is their size. So large areas, as shown, the Root River Parkway, those are primary environmental corridors. When you cut them in half and they no longer meet that threshold, they became secondary. And when you butcher that a few more times, then all that's left is an isolated natural area. So I would argue that the isolated are actually the most threatened, that you could take a little nibble out of the big one and not have as big of an impact. I'm also going to further say that because we are protecting the rest of the natural resources, they're going to fall within these boundaries almost every time. So I'd like to say 0. I don't know if we can legally. And if we're going to allow it, they should be mitigated at least 1.5 times. I would argue that the penalty ought to be even more severe. The problem is where do you find a place to mitigate the loss of an isolated natural area? You have to go out and basically find a piece of a primary corridor by a designated deed restricted. It's a tough one. But I guess the first question is the legal, are we committed to preserving and protecting these? And maybe the city attorney can help us, or we need to do some homework on that. That's been my understanding for several years, that prior commitment was made. And it is included in the Harkin Open Space Plan for Southeastern Wisconsin from Sewer Pack Memo 76. It's all in there. They give the rationale for why they should be preserved and protected. And I'm going to acknowledge that there are probably, you could find something where a road needs to be rebuilt, might have some sort of an impact on it. But if it's shown as an isolated natural area, we shouldn't be looking at it for development if it can't be developed within the parameters of that. And I've also got comments and thoughts that we'll probably get to about the environmental protection standards. And in reviewing all this, and the more I think about it, and as much as I like strong protection on environmental, I would strongly recommend that governmental entities be exempt from having to do any of this. And that would be the state of Wisconsin, the counties, the city,
School?
Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewage District. We could argue about the school. But
I just don't want the school being tied up with this.
It's not, I'm not suggesting an exemption because we're more powerful or mightier. The state of Wisconsin now owns parkland in Franklin. If they want to go in there and butcher trees, if they want to plant 1,000 trees, if they feel that they want to do, we talked about low quality wetlands, do a project that would enhance those, they shouldn't have to go through our whole regime. Our process has been set up to mitigate impacts from development. The definition of a development that we use basically goes all the way down to minor grading modifications. Okay, so now you're asking a government entity, and again, this all comes on the back of our staff, who has to review and process all of these. And then you've got consultants that are hired to delineate all the boundaries and the buffers. We've seen the process. And the point is I think we're probably we're trying to require them to do something they can't. Milwaukee County, the state, a lot of times these lands are acquired with funds that come with strings attached that don't allow you to encumber it. But you have to understand what we do with the natural resource protections is we say, okay, we draw a bubble around something, whatever the standards are, and deed restrict it. Actually create a certified survey map that shows the bubble and says that this will never be impacted. That's, well, could be considered a taking, but more importantly for government, that's forcing them to go through a process. It's basically saying to one of the park departments, city, county, whoever, MMSD, that if you want to do anything, you want to change anything, you're going to end up in a situation where you got to go back and do title work and search to find out whether you have the right to encumber the property. Because you're taking, just for example, money, federal money went to buy this parcel here, and all of a sudden, and you argued with the grant program that you went through that this was important for this and for that, and now you're going to go to them and say, well, but we need to encumber some of that. So if it involved a building, I'm all for that. If it's just operations, forestry work, regrading, got a whole bunch of bad wetlands that need some help, those would be the compelling arguments that I would make for that exception. We already granted to ourselves. The city has that exception. So if we've got a road project, just ignore all the rules. It's in there. And so, again, I want a system and a process. But what we're trying to protect the city against environmentally is destruction from development, from buildings and parking lots. So none of those government entities that I mentioned would come in here, would not come in here if they were going to put up a building. Forestry Exploration Center, something like that. They're going to come in and build it. They're going to come to the city and say, we need permits. We need all of that stuff. But if, we've had serious issues with Emerald Ash Borer, they're going down. Natural resource special exceptions prohibit somebody, unless you go through a documentation procedure, from removing those dead trees. So that's the sort of thing I'm getting at. I think we could save staff a whole lot of time and money and effort by eliminating those entities which have a legitimate reason for doing it. MMSD, they're in the process of buying up lands, their Green Seam program to prevent development of them. So they're already taking care of that mission that we have in our UDO that says we want to protect and preserve natural resources. We want to make it a better community. You're not going to find these entities in a situation where they're in there bulldozing property just for the fun of it. It costs money. And if we're looking to save staff time and effort, that'd be great. The consultants won't like it because there's a lot of paperwork involved in the natural resource protection program. You got surveying, you got civil engineers, you got to dedicate it all. Staff's got to review it, and then we have to somehow enforce it. Right? We've had this conversation many times. Should we be putting up boulders along the edge of the conservation easement or fences? I don't want to get too deep into it, but I would strongly.
Well, we're deep into it.
Well, my thoughts.
But if I could ask you on that
Yes.
conservation easement, let's just say, for example, the school referendum for the addition and the build of the high school's got 26 acres of a conservation easement. Are we going to allow, which we should, it's their property, but are they going to be able, if we change this to, that's why I said include schools, that they can make the change they need to make?
Why is the conservation easement there? What's it trying to protect?
No idea, but it's 26
That's
acres.
my point.
It's 26 acres on the east side of the high school that they need a part of that. They need a part of that for tennis courts. They need a part of that for park. I mean, we're getting into weeds here.
And again,
But the
what
bottom
about-
line is that they need to, we cannot we cannot obstruct them from doing their job. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I hope that's not where you're going with this.
No, and that piece of property is already deed restricted? It has a conservation easement on it?
It's got 26 acres, yes.
Okay, well, that can be modified. And if you want, and what I'm saying here, if you want to include the school district, that's fine. The threshold should not be which governmental agency it is, but whether what they're proposing is going to impact that natural resource. Buildings and parking lots do that. Planting
That's my
trees,
concern.
cutting trees. Right, but the reality is, if the Parks wants to go out and fix up an area, they've got a management plan that says we're gonna take these degraded wetlands and make them all better, then why should they have to invest thousands and thousands of dollars and probably 2 months' worth of time on something that's gonna encumber that land that they may not legally be able to do it? So
Unless we make that change, which allows the government entity
what
to
we
act on
do
their
is,
own.
in the portion where Franklin already gives itself the exception, you write in 5 new entities, whoever those want to be. The city of Franklin already has these exceptions. It's in here. So, and we did that because Public Works came to us and said, you know, we can't be coming in and getting our own permits every time we want to.
No, that's ridiculous.
Move a
It's
shovel
absolute
full of dirt.
stupidity.
Well,
It's dumb.
it's the ordinance.
And then that's why things need to be changed, because it's not 1956. We just didn't incorporate.
How would we change that? I guess, what I'm saying is the protections are already
How do we
there.
change them? It goes to council. That's how you change it. I mean, we're
And that's
battling this thing, and I don't want to
I'm
be
just-
labored anymore.
All I'm saying is that there are certain entities that going forward should not have to go through
Agreed.
the NRPP process. That's
Absolutely
what I'm
agree.
saying.
Mr. City Attorney, could you turn them on and then Commissioner Speck?
Only that categorizing governments on one side and all private sector on the other side. Is that fair treatment?
Well, they're
Are
developing.
you protecting natural resources? And my only other comment, this goes back decades, when this ordinance was put together, meetings after meetings after meetings after meetings, it was hailed and has been through the years as the most restrictive but also important natural resource features protection law in the large area wide. So
And I agree with that, but there's a difference between entities that are trying to protect and preserve the natural resources and developers that want to come in and bulldoze and put buildings on the property. They're the ones that should be held to standard. The Parks Department, MMSD, these programs, they're already out there protecting their own lands. They're enhancing them. They won't let somebody come in and harvest wood on them. What I guess I'm saying is they're self-regulating. Whereas anybody that comes in, okay, so you bring up the issue of the school. So they've got development plans. Right away, they're going to have to come in and talk to planning staff and say, gee golly, you know, we've got something out there. What do we do? And what does staff tell them? Okay, go out and get it delineated, get it surveyed, bring it all in, back in, show us your site development plan. I agree that everyone should be going through that, except government entities that are already committed to protecting, preserving, and enhancing natural resources.
All right,
Acceptable.
let's hold it there for a minute.
Yep.
All right? Commissioner Specht, Alderman Day, and then Ms. X, okay?
So Kevin's point that I'd like to agree with here is that I believe that the agencies that were looking to allow this right to get waived from this requirement,
exception.
or this exception, is we're ideally, hopefully, thinking for the betterment of the community and not necessarily coming in and putting profit first. At least that is what I feel is our role in here is that we're looking to protect the community that we are building. And I'd like to hope that any government agency or anyone who's associated with a government agency is putting that thought process first. So I'd like to state my support with the fact that we should be identifying these groups that are associated with taxpayer funding and, you know, give that exemption. But when it comes to development and then they're looking at putting profit first and not necessarily the benefit of the community, that's when we definitely should be enforcing this compensation. Did I use the right word, Marion? Compensation? for if they are damaging any of the environmental areas of concern.
And as I said, these are entities that
Mr.
are.
Haley,
al-
back on point.
Thank you. These are entities that are already committed to protection and enhancement of our natural resources, period.
Good.
If they want to put up a building, then make them go through the process. But if they're just
Agreed.
managing their land, why would we go there?
And to Commissioner Speck's point, I don't know, I don't think anybody's looking to see our community hurt. We want to see it protected. I just don't want to see the school, that's why I'm focusing on the school entity part of
And
it.
that's one of
And
the
that's-
government agent, that we can make the list
Right.
of
And
approved
we-
government agencies that fall into that.
Correct, all in one day.
Thank you. So I have a couple of points that I wanted to make. The first is a question for staff. So in the proposed area here, we have essentially the same amount of compensation for each level. And from listening to Mr. Haley speak earlier, some of these are definitely more, I guess, threatened is maybe the word, or fragile than others. So is it, in your opinion, is it best to have them, be uniform there for all three categories, or should some have a little bit of a higher compensation just based on the nature of those particular types of resources? That was my first question. I don't know if you have an immediate answer on that or the rationale, because I notice in the draft UDO, it's, 1.5, 1, and 1, and then the proposed is 1.5 all the way down. But it sounds like the isolated natural might be something that we might want, a little bit more compensation or protection for. I mean, if the compensation's a little bit higher, maybe that is the deterrent that it is a little bit better protected. I don't know, but just something maybe to think about or consider. As I agree, this is not the first time I've heard that this particular portion of our UDO has hindered development in the past. So we don't want to, go, way to the wrong side of this. We still want to maintain the things that make Franklin, but I think there is some wiggle room, but then also making sure that we are protecting, our more fragile areas, as well as what was mentioned by Commissioners Speck and Haley, that there are some organizations that this is their goal. So, not to, make things more difficult for them. And then my second point, I was going to save this for a different area of this, but this document is not, it's meant to apply a standard. It's not meant to apply to specific entities. So when you start throwing around specific development proposals or specific businesses or whatever, that's not the purpose of this. The purpose of this is to be for the whole community to have the same kind of kick at the can. So it is unfortunate if an entity has a large development in play and they decided to use a giant swath of an environmental corridor as part of that development. I don't think they get a pass, or we change the rules to kind of get them through the door. They should have kind of thought that part through before they, got 7 horses out of the barn. But that's just my take on that. I'm not going to vote on something just because it benefits one particular entity.
Well, Ms. X, you had something?
A couple of things. First of all, to note that this is information the commission, the floodplain ordinance is a separate natural resource that has been already a city, not a the city of Franklin. So just to clarify that for the record. And then, so one of the things that has happened in the past, also an area where I would question who's the actor, is in land division applications, it's not uncommon that you'll road dedication, and the city becomes the owner of the road, they require resource impact. But the developer is dictating or requesting the layout of the bigger road. The city's current comprehensive master doesn't really address the. That is something that we. But a land division process could essentially train that requirement to, for natural resources to the city. So I have a bunch of about government permitting requirements at the local level. Well, I definitely hear the about not taxpayers. We think first of all we need to do and second of all, use some money. So it is something we could discuss a little.
Thank you, Commissioner Speckman and Commissioner Haley.
Alderman Day, some clarification, I guess, on the points that I was trying to make is, there's two different things that I was trying to make a point of building development is different. Land restoration and management should not be required to be permitted because the goal is to provide a better asset when everything is said and done. So I don't know if that clarifies some of your concern regarding building development as, you were referring in your example there.
No, I was referring to voting on changing things to benefit the school district's issue with their new referendum. That the document is not, changes in the document are meant to benefit the betterment of the community as a whole. And then there are obviously going to be outliers that, we'll still need staff review, we'll still need plan commission review, that we shouldn't be voting on things to an individual entity, whatever that entity is, whether it's the school district, whether it's the Rock, whether it's Root River, whether it's Croatian soccer field. We should be, this is more global. And then if there are outliers where things just don't match up, there's still the process that you go through. But I don't want to get caught in the weeds of making changes because it impacts or it might impact one particular business. We have to be more global than that and recognize that there's going to be outliers in every community that will still need those individual things. So, they still have to come before this body or Common Council or, the Environmental Commission or whatnot. That was the point I was making. I wasn't planning to make it here. I was planning to make it for a different topic, but it applies here as well.
Commissioner Speck, you still have the floor. Commissioner Haley?
I was not by any means proposing blanket exemptions from anything. The Natural Resource Protection Plan. It's been mentioned. Okay, we still have to comply with state and federal. Yes, if it's the DNR on their property, they're going to comply with that. If it's the county, they're going to comply with that. What I'm saying is, do we need to make these people come in and do an extra layer of due diligence with the city? If there's construction involved, they'll get city permits, but they shouldn't have to come in on a 300 square acre piece of property and delineate every natural resource on there, draw lines around it, get a surveyor to encumber the lands that maybe they can't even do that. So that's all I'm saying here. And forgive me because I caused us to digress. We were actually talking about environmental corridors. My comments mostly apply to the natural resources. My first sort of question on the environmental corridors is, can we do it? As I said, I believe that there's documentation out there that we agreed to Southeastern Wisconsin, and I don't know whether it was legal on paper or just a handshake or whatever, that we were going to protect all three of these resources, not wetlands, not woodlands, only these. And I don't know who can answer that question for me, but we need to find out, can we legally do what we're proposing to do?
Marion?
That is something that I would like to get back to you with the definitive on. I will provide a little bit of context based on what I remember, which is that when the regional planning commission had that request,
and I appreciate, that's really what I'm looking for here. My understanding is Sewer PAC writes these into their grandiose plans that these corridors should be protected, preserved. But they don't have the legal means to say to municipalities, you must do this. So they strongly encourage them through whatever arm twisting or writing it into their own park and open space plans. You know, that's one of the places that a lot of communities do that. They'll put that in their park and open space plan that, yes, we are going to protect them. So I know the issue here. I think you understand it. We need further guidance on that. And that said and done, if we find out that we can in fact allow them, then I would look for at least 1.5 times the maximum allowable in terms of mitigation, because these are so rare.
Okay, Mr. Fuchs, you want to chime in quick and then back to Marion?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that another thing that we may want to look into is SuperPAC does have. So just if that needs to be lined up in some way or part of this, typically they'll. Good or probably part of the conversation is how.
Thank you, Mr. Fuchs. Marion? Raise your hand. Are you looking for us to not take, go ahead, you get the floor quick. You got it.
Sorry. I would suggest that we table this item.
I'll make that motion to table this item.
I'll second.
First and second table,
Until-
uh-oh.
It was specified time.
Mr. City Attorney's all over that. Want to go next meeting, or
Well, it's tabled forever.
it could be tabled forever?
And tabled
A-
until the staff has
April.
gathered the correct information
No.
to bring back to the committee at the immediate following meeting.
Whenever they obtain the correct information as requested by Plan Commission members.
In my second. I'll
Is that good?
support that.
Sounds
First.
lovely.
Second.
Michelle, it does, doesn't it? And Michelle, second. We're gonna have to do a roll call on this one. Everything's roll call, starting with Commissioner Speck.
Aye.
Commissioner Speck, yeah. Commissioner Ishago.
Aye.
Commissioner Haley. Alderwoman Agnew.
Aye.
Alderwoman Day.
Aye.
Abstain.
5 ayes, no noes, 1 abstention, motion carries to table. Thank you. Moving forward, what do we?
This is a question about the zoning map, this particular parcel that is on R1E, which allows for more than one unit. Sorry. So these are the options identified by staff. Staff recommends the first option, that is to eliminate the R1E district and designate this parcel to planned development. If the Plan Commission decides this option, then staff will need to work and prepare a planned development district for this parcel.
Right, and just to confirm, staff is recommending number 1. Okay?
Correct.
Further discussion, Alderwoman Day.
Thank you. I have been kind of working on this a little bit with Regulo as well as the property owner. So just for my clarification, so I can take it back to the property owners. If we go along with the staff recommendation for the PDL, that would then basically kind of grandfather, for lack of a better term, their current R1E I guess. So with regard to the height and where the fencing could be placed and all of those things that were mentioned in the emails back and forth with us. I'm making sure that we're protecting, what is happening. Some of it is done, some of it is not done. It's a fairly extensive and expensive project, so just trying to get clarification on if, because it does say in here that, then the R1E will go away, but I want to make sure that they're retaining the things that were within that zoning previously.
Yes, the intent is, what we're planning to do is kind of copy and paste all the requirements from the current R1E zoning district to a planned development district only for that parcel.
Okay, so my follow-up question to that is, that seems like a lot of work to do that and then create a separate PDD for this one parcel. Is it more or less work to just leave it as R1E because it was the only parcel that was that before? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. It just seems like when I think through the steps for that process, I think to myself, if we're leaving all of the things in place for them that were the R1E, would it not just be easier to leave it as is? I don't know the answer to that.
It requires some staff hours, but we process planned development districts in the department. That's normally something that we do. We can just prepare the ordinance, have the public hearing, present it to the plan commission and the common council.
Okay.
And we would like to simplify the draft, and this eliminate justice district for one parcel that would be really helpful.
Yeah, and I appreciate Attorney Rademacher, looking into it and the comments that he provided as well. I don't necessarily agree 100% with his recommendation at the end, because I truly do believe that there is a way around this to allow them to continue with the development. So I appreciate you working with them, and I'm supportive of the first of your recommendation.
Yield?
Yeah.
Mr. City Attorney?
Just for clarification, the staff recommendation with regard to rezoning it to planned development legacy, that's a planned development district, correct?
Right, but we'll need to prepare that
One
ordinance.
Property or whatever property is here in the district total, correct?
Yes, yeah.
So a planned development district ordinance is a zoning ordinance and a zoning category only for the properties within that district, correct?
Yes.
And you cannot apply to rezone a property somewhere else to that particular planned development district, correct?
No, unless you change the boundary to an adjacent property. Change the boundary and include an adjacent property.
It would have to be adjacent. My point is, that's the difference versus just leaving it as is R1-E, because under R1-E, any property elsewhere within the city could technically apply to have their this property result to that.
That's fair. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you for the clarification, sir. So any other further discussion? Alderwoman Day, would you like to make the recommendation or the motion?
I would make the motion as staff recommends to eliminate the R1E district and designate this parcel to a planned development legacy.
Perfect. Is there a second?
Second.
First and second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Specht,
Aye.
Commissioner Shagop, Commissioner Haley,
Aye.
Alderman Eichmann,
Aye.
Alderman Day,
Aye.
Commissioner Leon.
Abstain.
5 ayes, no noes, 1 abstention. Motion carries.
Okay. And this is the question about the parcel owned by the Franklin Public Schools. So 2 options, one institutional, and the second option is limited industrial. If the Plan Commission recommends the option for institutional, then staff will need to work on a comprehensive master plan amendment from commercial and business parks to institutional.
And I think that makes the most sense just because it is institutionalized and it's the school, and that's, I understand there's between 1 and 2, there's 2 separate entities that you'd be looking at for end user. But at least number 1, we've identified it is specific to the school on school property. So that's my 2 cents on that. Anybody willing to make the motion for number 1? Staff recommends number 1, correct?
Staff recommends number 1, and the preferred option by the owner, Franklin Public Schools, is option 1.
Is 1. So staff recommends it and the school's requesting it.
I'll
Got
make
it.
the motion.
I'll second.
Good, we got a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Specht,
Aye.
Commissioner Shago, Commissioner Haley,
Aye.
Alderman Eichmann,
Aye.
Alderwoman Day,
Aye.
Commissioner Leo.
Abstain.
5 ayes, no noes, 1 abstention, motion carries.
Thank you. Those are all the questions for policy direction. Happy to answer any question about the draft. And then we have the general kind of motion that says to recommend the whole draft.
Okay, further questions now before we go into the general motion? Alderwoman Day? Oh, everybody, excellent. So why don't we start with Alderwoman Day and we'll work back this way.
Okay. I have one question still from the packet that we had presented to us with the changes from the last, and it pertained to your PowerPoint presentation. So if you could go back to the one on the protest petitions, it didn't match what was in here.
There you go.
So what we have in ours, under proposed UDO, we don't have the red cross that says no next to it.
Correct, yeah.
They'll have it saying yes. And then it says, the staff recommendation here is to retain the protest petition section from the current UDO. So it's kind of backwards from what's over
Correct,
there.
because we received a comment from city attorney this week
Okay.
with information
Okay, so
about
that
this.
came out after this. Got it. Okay, that was my question when we were going through it, that I noticed it was different. Okay. And then I only have it looks scary because I have a lot of writing, but I promise I won't ask all of these. I promise I won't ask all these questions. So I think I heard Ms. X mention in one of her presentations on some of the resource protection that we need to go back and change the name in here of the Environmental Commission to whatever we're calling it now going forward. So that was just one kind of minor correction that I had. And then if we go to that lovely 15304 chart, which is the uses. I just had a few questions on that one. I noticed that some things are green and some things are white. Is there a reason why some things are different colors?
Yes, the ones that are green is because the ordinance provide specific standards
Okay,
for these uses.
okay. Got it, that makes sense. So still on the table, so a couple of questions that I have. So some of the newer items that are on here, some of the newer uses that may not have been in the previous UDO, and I'm thinking specifically along the short-term rentals and food trucks. Those have some very specific state guidelines and requirements, and I didn't really notice in the UDO references to making sure that we're also following state standards on those as far as if I'm just thinking about the short-term rental, just making sure that what we have in the document for the description of that matches what is a state code, and that just making sure that you double back with the health department to make sure, because that's a new thing that they are also licensing and monitoring within the last little bit. So making sure that everybody's congruent with those. I spoke with the health department today, and they were not necessarily up to speed with the most recent version of this. So if we could just double back with them and make sure that we're not doing different things for different folks. And then for the point that was brought up this evening on the public interest in special events, I understand I understand where the residents were coming from when they were talking about the how it looks in here as a permitted use. But then I also understand our process, because I'm within our process. So when I look at it with my lens as a council member, I'm like, well, of course we know that it comes for special event applications and permits and whatnot. But I can see how somebody might not know that hasn't done things before. I'm not talking about specific entity. I'm talking about somebody wants to come in and have, I don't know, some sort of like Woodstock event at Croatia soccer field. And they're like, oh, look, Croatia is, this is my special event. It's permitted. I'm just going to do it. So I can see how that could be misleading to somebody who might not know the process in general. So I think it's fair to maybe have an asterisk next to that says, is subject to potential other permits, licensing, something, so that there is some sort of something there for somebody from the general populace that might mistake permitted use for being, I can just go do that. I think that's fair. And then I think the only other one I had.
On like page 9, I think.
Right, exactly. I think the only other one that I had that I thought maybe is 15701, which is in it's in the Natural Resource Protection Standards. It's fairly early on. It's I'll give it to you. It's sub C, sub 2B, and it talks about the removal of dead, diseased, or invasive species. I would just change the verbiage because it says the city forester may be consulted, the city forester may condition. I think they should have input on that. I would change it from saying may to shall. I think they should be
Agreed.
consulted on that. So it's just a semantics verbiage change. I just think, with all the things that we have going on, we have the expertise. We can maybe have him take a look at those for sure when they come through. But other than that, everything else I had was stuff that we talked about earlier today. So thank you for that.
Commissioner Haley.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. In response to city forester, DNR, Milwaukee County, all these entities have their own forestry staffs. They're experts on this. There's no reason for them to seek out, waste the time of our city forester if they want to have a nice meeting and walk through the woods one day. But they all have forestry experts on staff. DNR has many, many of them. The county has probably 15.
Perhaps there could be a caveat that if they don't have
Yeah.
one on staff, then the city of Franklin shall be,
I think that's why it ended up as may, but we need to figure out a better word.
Yeah.
well, we could just make that verbiage if they don't have one on staff. That's a fair, I believe it's a
Again,
fair.
we're trying to save the expenditure of our
Yeah.
staff time as well.
Exactly.
Tom Maria.
Okay.
Welcome.
You ready?
Still got the floor. Go. Use the term butcher at least 3 times.
Oh, no. I'm going to assume that these first things make sense. Future drafts will include a table of contacts, an index, and page numbers, please. It's extremely difficult to
Yeah, I
read, and
numbered
I'm
my
assuming
own.
that's just right? That's just a process thing. But right up front, we need to have a table of contents. There should be an index at the back so that you can find this stuff. Because what I did is I sat down and I, having already gone through this thing 3 or 4 times, looked at it with fresh eyes as, what's working, what's not working here, what can we do better? So I think that helps. Page numbers, table of contents, index. We need to update our definitions as well. One of the things that confused me as I was going through the parks stuff is that we show parks and open space on our zoning map as a category. There's no definition. There's a gap. If you go to open space, there's a definition for that. If you go to look at park, there's nothing in the definitions. So we need to be clear that it's park and open space and where it is. It's a housekeeping thing. Because it was very difficult for me, and I've got all this, and I've got 19 years of looking at this stuff, but when I wanted to find out what the regulations our parks were, there was no direct link to it. Okay, so if I know the pages, then it's all good. What I'm suggesting is I've got several of these minor things that I'd be willing to meet with staff on. We did this previously with the other stuff, and we were able to clean up a lot of that. I'll mention them now so you know, but if in fact we do lay this over, I would volunteer to meet with staff to go through my further concerns. But I will share them with you now, just so that we're all aware, because again, this is my thought patterns, not necessarily yours. So as far as parks and open space, we need a specific definition. We need to look at the difference between active and passive. Trails, for example, we're proposing we will have trails on all different kinds of property. We Energies easements, county property, city property. So we need to make sure that those types of uses are permitted in all of these categories. I mean, even residential, in theory, because that's the whole idea, is to connect our city with trails. So all of the uses that ought to be compatible with all of them. We talked briefly about
Exactly.
uses, well, read through this 4 times. And by the way, you did a great job,
Thank you.
right? I mean,
Oh,
we're going for perfection here.
Staff did a
Because this is, the whole idea was to make it more usable, more friendly, more accurate.
more friendly.
And I
Yeah,
think
right.
we got it there, yeah, and the pictures help, but, and we probably ought to give some thought to the difference between public and private parks. We sort of had that previous discussion, is how we ascertain those, at what point they get that designation.
Do you think it's, Mr. Haley, with usability, like who's allowed to use them, or that use that as a guideline?
It could be,
Okay.
you know, we could talk about this for hours, it's an interesting philosophical discussion.
Maintenance.
Yeah,
Right,
who's doing the
maintenance.
maintenance, are there safety concerns?
Lots of things, absolutely.
You know, parks and open spaces have recreational immunity laws that protect them, so you can't be sued if you're out riding your bike. On private property, that doesn't exist. That, you know, state law says you have to be recreating, so we need to look at all of those things. I can't quote where it is, but I know in the old UDO, I've stumbled across, in the park section, there's language about adopting other, I'll just keep saying, park master plans. Southeastern Wisconsin, Milwaukee County all have park and open space plans, usually written in conjunction with sewer pack. We should be adopting those in concept, be consistent. And there's also language, there was language about, for example, with the county, Chapter 47 of county ordinances regulates what happens with and in parks. And in the old version, the city adopts those. So whatever the entities are, we need to make sure that the cities, and I'm sure it's at the state levels, just like we agree to floodplain stuff and wetlands, those are all required. I believe there's a legal need to state that to connect them, and we'd have to talk to the legal expertise there. But there was a reason that those were always historically there. For example, Grove Schmidt Park, somebody's out there driving a car around the infield of the baseball field. Somebody gets on the phone, Franklin police show up. Well, this is county property, I can't do anything. So my understanding is that by the city adopting these other ordinances, it provides the authority for local law enforcement to step in.
That's exactly right. So operating vehicle off roadway, under chapter 47 is operating vehicle off roadway. So
Right.
Franklin Police would
So-
enforce that, because I used to get a number of those calls and be like, nope, go ahead.
Right. And-
Park hours over at The Point, and I'll leave it like that at Whitnall Park, it's not the official name, but that's 10:01 PM, 10 o'clock's Franklin would write after hours citations to people up if they wanted to, under chapter 47, they would adopt that.
And I would argue that there's also regulations.
I took one of your pills.
There's state statutes. Again, we're a growing city, things are changing. We've got state parkland in our community now. So we probably need to adopt state statutes in much the same way. There's a whole bunch of people that we should be, MMSD. Okay, MMSD has stormwater standards, chapter 13. Okay, we're required to do that. Engineering usually reviews those as part of a site plan thing, but we need to get in here that we're adopting those in concept or in fact or whatever it is. I'm not the attorney here. Oh. Okay, the only big one then, I already did my environmental corridors diatribe. And I do think that the public has brought up meaningful comments about outdoor acoustic noise controls and things like that, and we ought to get our hands around that. As, you know, we keep, other municipalities have ordinances for whatever. We've got one bad player and we can't seem to manage it. I'm not going to get in the middle of that one, but we ought to have enforceable ordinances that say this is what the sound
Mr.
level.
Martinez?
No, just want to make a comment on that. The update to the noise regulations that was handled as a separate project, and the consultant prepared a draft of the noise regulation that is not part of this UDO. Okay, this UDO only in the Article 5 that provided performance standards that specify that a noise study or sound study may be required for some kind of special use permit with outdoor music. So there's a separate ordinance, draft ordinance for that. So if the Plan Commission recommends to approve the UDO, so what staff recommend is not to repeal the UDO section about noise, because that will be part of a separate municipal code chapter. So that will remain in place until that update is adopted.
Yeah, we'd like to see that. Again, we should be able to have very straightforward language. You know, if we've got a bad player or two, we deal with that how we have to. But the rules still ought to be X number of decibels at any property boundary, right? And it needs to be short-term, long-term, whatever the events are.
Correct. We have a separate draft ordinance for that.
Let's see it. Okay,
After Kevin.
we're getting closer here.
Actually.
Well, we're gonna go back to this one. The proposed RC Conservation Residence District. Well-intentioned, I'm trying to figure out why we're doing this. I asked the question a different way last time. Okay, so this is the proposed, you all got it in your packet, the yellow. These are parcels that we're proposing to rezone to a new RC Conservation Residence District. Makes sense. My first observation is this is what I was always trained as spot zoning. It's what we try not to do in planning, right? You know, there have to be differences, but we've got scattered parcels all over in the middle of different things. I would like to recommend that there's probably a better way, and I think it was in the old UDO. We incentivize developers. So these don't need to be designated in this RC residence district. It's some other appropriate resident district. And you have to comply with the rules and the natural resource protection standards, but you can incentivize developers, get higher densities, you can get, you know, relief on this natural resource things. There's a different way to get there, provided as an alternative, because part of it, and I did mention this briefly before, but some of these parcels, I think the question I asked last time is, what's the rationale? How are we doing that? And in some cases, well, I'm looking at this now. Some of these are vacant parcels of land, 60, 80, 90% natural resources, environmental corridors on them. Some of them actually have existing residences on them. And yet we're saying somehow you should be able to go back and cut it smaller and put another house on. If there's an existing residence on a piece of property, regardless of natural resources, why do we need to regulate that or put it in its own category? The idea should be that if you want to put an addition on, you don't meet square footages, and there's ways that you can be incentivized to do this. I'm all for cluster development and conservation type subdivisions, but why are we telling people where to put them? What the reality that people are going to figure out, and it's interesting when you look at the mapping and you look at the old stuff, the environmental corridors in particular, there's not a lot of undeveloped land in Franklin, except in the southwest, which we're proposing to zone agriculture and prime agriculture, okay? So the way to get the development in the southwest that we're ultimately going to want but can't have because of the natural resource restrictions we've placed on them is to provide incentives, ways to work around that. And that is, if I'm not mistaken, that's the way our old ordinance read, basically, that you could do a conservation subdivision, but you come in and you ask for that. You go, hey, look, I've looked at the natural resource, my consultants tell me this isn't going to work, I need some give here. Go, okay, well then we'll do a conservation type subdivision on it. In going through this in my mind and looking at the parcels we selected, I don't understand the rationale. Leave it the way it was and tighten up those rules that give people a reason to work around the natural resources, right? There are developable parcels on here. Well, I pointed one out to you that are literally 90% environmental corridor, and there's no real way to get in there with the house, but we're suggesting this one right here. That's all 90% secondary environmental corridor. These right here are isolated natural areas. So I think we're getting ourselves, I'm not saying that this is a bad idea. I think we're getting ourselves in a corner with this, that we don't really need a residence district for these. Provide incentives for other residential. It's still going to be residential, but if you want to come in and you want to push or bend the rules, then here's the way you work through that. And it may be a philosophical discussion for another time, whatever, but if we reduced a whole bunch of residential categories, I think we can get rid of this one and actually find ways to incentivize future builders and developers into working in harmony with the natural environment rather than having to pave everything.
I didn't have this.
I didn't say butcher.
You were dying to say it. So we'll go with Regulo, and then we're going to go with Commissioner Speck, then Alderwoman Eichmann.
Was I done?
Yeah, I didn't present the conservation residence, but it's outlined in the memo. So the criteria was to select parcels that are currently zoned R1 and R2, because these are the two districts that had the lowest residential density. Like, for example, the R1 requires, I think it's like 2 acres or a lot. So we revised the draft to kind of lower the density of the RC district to 1.5 dwelling units per acre. That is kind of similar to what it's currently for the R1 and the R2. And then and this is under a separate article, that's the option for the cluster development. They can have that 30% density bonus, but it needs to go through the approval process. So what?
Well, that's what I'm
Right,
proposing.
but what
Is
do
that
you?
Zone them like everything else around them, whether it's RSE, RC, whatever all the surrounding properties are, right? You're not doing any taking, you're not doing anything. They're what they are now. We're creating a new category and pushing them into it. And
Well, the residential conservancy exists in the current UDO. There is a zoning district called Residential Conservancy or Conservation Residence. So, but I would like to try to understand what is your concern and what the
my concern
alternative.
is we're overly complicated. Well, one is that we're designating which parcels. Let the
R1 and
Let
R2.
the home builder decide, I'd really like to build this here, but I've got woods and wetlands there, and the only way I'm going to do it is some other way. So you're giving them alternatives and incentives to do the right thing. I mean, I'm thinking particular developers. They come in, they want to do a 30-unit, 30-lot subdivision.
Right. That's why it has the cluster development option. That's an option if they want to have that
That's
density
what I'm getting at. That
increase.
should be the option.
Right, and it's an option.
That's not going away?
No, it's under the Article 8, and it is not. It applies to the residential conservancy and other residential districts. So that's an option.
Okay, good. So it's there. So why do we need to designate these?
Because we'll need to have a zoning district for these particular parcels. It cannot be. It
why
currently R1 and R2,
You call them RSC?
unless we retain the R1. And I mean, I just trying to find a kind of a solution.
I understand that.
Right.
I just think that this could be seen as a taking. It could be seen as
No,
that
I
doesn't
mean,
make sense when everything else around it. Look at these tiny little pieces in there. Why are they so different than everything else surrounding them?
because it is called conservation resident, that doesn't mean that it's parks or something like that.
Why
It
not?
is still residential, but it has a lower density, and that density is similar to what is the current density for the R1 and the R2 districts.
It's a philosophical discussion. We planners can have another time. I don't see the need for it, but if you, there's
Marion,
no
do you have
reason
a
that
comment?
every one of these parcels can't be RC or RSE.
Is it just the name conservation? that's the.
Right.
No, it's the fact that we're creating a separate definition for just these parcels that are completely surrounded by other types of residential and/or agricultural. Why are we, we're creating something we don't need?
Because I think it's just another zoning district. You combine.
Right. Right.
They combine the R1 and the R2, just like they combine the R3, R4.
Right. Correct. Correct.
Into it. I think it's just.
I'm following you there. Why do we have to create a new one? Why can't we just eliminate one more?
I think
Be-
everyone got.
Right. Because these are different than the suburban residents. I mean, we try to consolidate, but not too much. I don't know.
Marion, can you bring us home?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this district has all of the zoning standards in terms of additional requirements. It's consolidated.
R1 and R2.
Existing district. It does not require a conservancy division. It is an option. for all development,
Correct.
all residential development. I think we're getting conflating the zoning district plating option.
Maybe it's nomenclature. I'm reading RC Conservation Residence District.
That's just the name. I mean, and you can change it to, I don't know.
The only similarity I see in these is every one of these parcels has got natural resources on it.
But that's regulated separately by the
I agree.
Natural Resource Protection.
Whatever. I'm giving you an opportunity to get rid of one more category that we probably don't need.
Well, we do
Wait.
because the lot sizes are, so the district largest lot sizes and allow are in this category and RS is a different
Right.
category.
We can take a look at revise the name
Oh, but-
if it's that necessary.
I'm just,
It's a philosophical discussion.
well, as again, as
For later.
I go to our
No, I
Fine
got
City
you.
website and I look at these parcels and, well, why did that one get picked? I mean, I'm looking at several of these are large lots with a house on them already.
I think it's a correlation. The R1 and R2 were the larger districts, or the larger lot sizes, so you have the lot size have the natural correlation of that zoning change. I think it's,
I'm confused. Thank you for attempting to straighten it out.
Mr. Haley, you still
Why
have the floor.
some have existing residences on them and some are bare?
Because residential is allowed in this conservation residence.
Yes.
It's a residential district.
So then I'm one of these small people and I've got this chunk, so I can come in and put more houses on my property? I mean, I understand we gotta deal with accessory dwellings and all of that, but
I mean, if
there's
follow the
already a
plating
residence there, then
process
why do
and
we need
the
to change it?
standards.
I surrendered.
Never
I'm not
surrender.
gonna, I'm not gonna argue.
That was
planning.
Triumph, 1982.
It runs contrary to my planning experience and
Well, then why don't we just not, okay, so how do you want to bring us home? Marion, I had the faith in you that you were going to tie this all together and we were going to just take off right down to Commissioner Specht. So now, as far as how we're going to deal with this, because I really, it's like I look at the clock and it's like now an hour and a half into this same discussion about this one. We got to move on with this. So you're doing a great job, but for Commissioner Haley's, Marion, for Commissioner Haley's questions, perhaps that could be just dealt with off, like you mentioned before, if that's fair and reasonable.
We can have a meeting like the
Somehow,
ideal.
his points are valid, but I don't think
Right.
we're going to solve them tonight,
And it's all
going
my
around
fault.
and
I'm the
around
one
and
that's dense and is not understanding, but I asked the same questions last time. Why we're creating this district and why these parcels, what criteria it was that got them there.
You're converting me, Kevin. Like I'm starting to ride the train with you, so.
Oh, boy.
Not at this
The
meeting.
Gummy Express. All right, so
There'll be one of
Jesse,
those unresolved issues that'll be coming back, assuming we table some of this stuff, right?
Only that, you did say there was a barren property. That's not permitted in Packerland.
that was wonderful.
It
So
was there.
now that we've lost complete control of the meeting, so Mr. Haley, do you yield so we can go to Commissioner Specht?
Oh, I'd love to hear from Commissioner Specht. Thank you.
You have the floor, ma'am.
Just to bring up a comment that Marion said earlier, that there were some other topics that needed to be tabled. My question, I guess, is how can we consider approving this when we still have information that needs to be brought back? So if someone could provide some clarification for me on that topic.
Okay, so we have the motion about the whole draft, right? But we also wanted to get input from you, the policy direction, and we receive it. Great, so we can make these changes from the policy direction. And then if the plan commission decide, we can table for the next meeting, provide that additional revisions and bring it again.
So we're
to the plan
sending it to the council in 2 phases?
No, it will return to the plan commission
Okay,
with
so we're not
additional revision.
going to vote tonight on moving it forward.
No,
Okay.
that was the fun
That's-
plan earlier, but no. So, so what we're gonna do is staff is going to make their adjustments, answer the questions that the commissioners had, and then hopefully the 5 of you will come back and be leaders and vote and move this thing forward to
Great.
council.
I just wanted to.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
There's
Mr.
different leaderships out there.
There is, there's a lot of different leaderships. So, Commissioner Speck, you still have the floor?
I yield.
Okay. Alderwoman Eichman.
Thank you. I just wanted to touch base on something that was mentioned earlier, and I welcomed Alderwoman Day to chime in as well on this. It was mentioned earlier, the one bad player. I guess that's more in the eye of the beholder of whosever version the one bad player is, because one bad player to one could be one good player to another. No pun intended in that, I guess. As far as the noise level, isn't that what the special use permit is for? That we approve in licensing for each event, for every special, do you understand where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
Or no?
Well, well, we're not going to ask the Alderwoman a question, but I believe Mr. Martinez.
Want to clarify that special events are regulated by the municipal code.
Right, okay.
You still got the floor, ma'am.
I think that was all I had for this moment. Oh, you.
Alderwoman Day?
Thank you. I have two last things. First, I also forgot to thank you all for all of the work of putting this together, and now you're going to have to reconvene all the things again for us, but thank you to your department for all of the work. And the last thing, because it was brought up tonight by a couple of the residents, and I did receive a few emails as well, I don't know if the mayor or the city administrator would feel the need to chime in on the RFP for the noise consultant and kind of if that plays in here, if that doesn't play in here, just to set the record straight on that, since it's come up to me by 3 or 4 different people today, just to kind of level set that for the record. I didn't want to speak out of turn because I don't know if I know the latest, so.
Do you want to start and I'll finish?
Thank you. So you're asking for a status on the RFP?
No, I'm asking, it was brought up this evening by a few people in the audience, as well as some emails I received about tabling sections of this to incorporate in the RFP that went out, that noise consultant, to have them review this. My understanding is we already had a consultant do noise stuff, and that will be presented later on. But I wanted, to have somebody who's familiar with the RFP process. I don't know where that is and how that consultant plays into this, if they don't play into this, just to set the record straight, since so many people had brought it up.
Yeah, so part of the RFP, it's kind of a catch-all, right? It's like our wish list, and then we'll see what ends up coming of it. But as part of that wish list is recommendations for what sound experts what they would set things at, or how they would monitor certain numbers, because I don't even know if we have it where it needs to be. Our municipal code and our UDO was written how many years ago? So technology has really advanced since then. And I'm not sure that what we have is accurate in terms of what's been proposed. I can't even, my brain can't access that file right now to even know what had been proposed and how it differs from the current UDO and municipal code. But certainly, I mean, I think that that's something that we can look at. I think it's open for discussion. If there's something that is recommended and it's drastically different than what we already are looking at, I think it certainly requires a larger audience to kind of dig into it and determine if it's appropriate or not. I don't know if I answered your question, but
Yeah, I guess the question, well, I guess I can be more specific. The question I was being asked, and that came up this evening, is will we table this UDO document with one of the purposes of it being tabled is to have whomever we choose from that RFP process do the review of the noise piece? My thought on that is no, because we already had a consultant kind of look at and come up with that separate noise ordinance, which we will see at a later meeting and discuss. But
Correct.
again, I did not want to, without coming here and getting the latest update
Yeah.
from you or the mayor on if that's my understanding from 2 weeks ago, but
correct.
changed. So,
Yeah, your understanding is correct.
yes, thank you. I was not being direct with my question. I apologize. Thank you.
No, and I'm my brain's done for the day, clearly.
Thank you, Alderwoman Day. Anyone else? Oh, Mr. Haley.
Hi, everybody. This document you prepared for us has a note, question marks, denote parcels identified for Plan Commission policy. We gave it to you here. You have another small parcel here with a question mark on it. Do you need our direction?
I already received it. That's the PDL property, the R1E district.
Okay, good, thank you. I didn't want to miss anything.
I bet you haven't. But no, in all seriousness, no, this is like a bad dream, no. So, Mr. Haley, thank you, because you did dig into the details. Thank you for everyone that's putting forth the effort, because there is a lot of detail and a lot of things. And staff, especially Marion Regulo, absolutely excellent job, and there's, this is not easy. There's people that are really watching certain parts of this and waiting to really hold the accountability train going. And I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page as much as we can be and just cover the things that we've got to cover. And that's it. So now, at this point, are you just looking for a motion to table this until staff can come up? Because, we're not going to put a date on it, but when staff has the information, they will then bring it back to plan, and then from plan back to council.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
First and a second, roll call, please.
Can I lead on this one?
You can, are you?
I am.
All right.
Commissioner Specht,
I don't get
Aye.
Commissioner Shago,
Aye.
Commissioner Haley,
Aye.
Alderwoman Eggman,
Aye.
Alderwoman Day,
Aye.
Commissioner Leung.
Abstain.
You had me going. 5 ayes, no nos, 1 abstention. Motion carries. Now, let's move on to E2, Firewise Barbecue Temporary Use, request for approval of a temporary use permit for a food truck operation until October 31, 2025 upon property located at 10925 West Speedway Drive. That is Menards. Tax key number 704-1007-000. Mr. Martinez.
Thank you. This is a food truck that has been approved in previous years. The application this year, it's the same period and location that has been approved before. Staff has no issues and recommends approval.
So staff recommends approval. Excellent.
No issues, I heard?
Yeah,
No issues. Staff recommends approval. Excellent. Is there a motion to
I'll
be
make-
read for this?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
First and second. Let's do roll call, please. Mr. Martinez, roll call, please.
Commissioner Specht,
Aye.
Commissioner Shago,
Aye.
Commissioner Haley,
Aye.
Alderwoman Eggman, Alderwoman Day,
Aye.
Commissioner Leung.
Aye.
Motion
6
to
ayes.
adjourn If we can get a roll call vote on it.
We are.
You know what? Let's go for a roll
The
call on
motion has
adjournment.
not been approved, so 6 ayes, no nos, motion carries. Now, under F as in Frank, motion to leave for the evening, adjourn.
Roll call, please.
We'll get there. So is there a motion, Mr. Leone? You want to get aggressive?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? As have it, motion carries. We are off the record at 8:44 PM.